I was about half done with my painting when I decided I need a smaller brush, so I went to the big sink to get one. About 15 or 20 brushes were sticking out of a bucket full of brownish, greenish, yellowish water. I grabbed a handful of brushes and looked for one that is the right size. Then I feel someone come up behind me, so I hurried up and reached off all the brushes under the faucet, took the one I wanted, and stuck the rest on the rack above the sink. I looked behind me, and Mrs. Cobb was standing there. She had this goofy look on her face, and her head was tilted to one side. And she was smiling at me. Jake, that is the sweetest thing anybody has done in this room all week. Which didn't make sense, since it was only Monday morning, and there hadn't been much of a week yet. But I guess that didn't matter to Mrs. Cott. I gave this lame little smile and said, I need a smaller brush so I can finish. Mrs. Cott said, and instead you finished your working to finish your picture, you start to help clean up the brushes. That is so sweet. By then, the whole class was watching us, and I was wishing that Mrs. Cott would stop saying sweet like that. But Mrs. Cobb wasn't done. She turned to all the kids in my class and said, if you all would be as sweet as Jake is and help clean up a little, then maybe this room wouldn't be such a mess all the time. Thank you so much, Jake. And as she said that, Mrs. Cobb patted me on the head. I took my small brush and hurried back to my easel. I started working on my picture again, trying not to feel so embarrassed. Then I heard Ben whispering something to Mark. In addition to being great with computers, Ben Grumson was probably the meanest kid in my third grade class, so he whispered extra loud so I'd be sure to hear him. Hey, Mark, don't you think Jake is just about perfect? He's so sweet. I'm pretending not to hear, but I know my face turned redder and redder. After art, we went back to our classroom for reading and social studies, and nothing had much happened. Then, right before lunch, we had gym class. Mr. Collins was having one of his tough guy days. You can tell with Mrs. Collins having a tough guy days because on tough guy days, he called all the boys and girls troops. After the bell rang, Mrs. Collins blew her whistle and shouted, Okay, troops, listen up. Get in a straight line here at the middle of the cart. Come on, troops, look alive. Today we're going to play dodgeball. Half the class groaned and the other half cheered. The kids who always get whomped by that fat red ball groaned, and the kids who are great at throwing and catching cheered. I was one of the kids who groaned. For me, dodgeball means trying to stay alive. Mr. Collins clapped his hand. All right, troops, everyone whose last name started with A through L, over to the far side of the cart, and through Z over behind me. Let's hustle. Go, go, go. Mr. Collins started the game by rolling the ball along the black line, the middle of the gym. Glenn Purdy ran out and grabbed a ball for the other team. There's nothing weird about dodgeball. I don't know why it brings out the worst in some kids, but it does. Take Glenn Purdy for example. In real life, Glenn was pretty good kid. He's friendly. He's a good partner in math or reading, and he's good to have on your side in a basketball game because he's so tall. But when in a game of dodgeball starts up, all of a sudden this nice guy turned into a beast. And his arm was so long that Glenn Purdy threw that fat red ball. It's like it was shot from a cannon. So Glenn had the ball right away. Our whole team backed all the way against the wall. We all know that Glenn was going to womp someone, and he did. Me, right on the shoulder. It took only about 4 minutes for the rest of my team get knocked out, and then Mr. Collins clapped his hand and said, "Let's go, troops, another round. This time is a 2-ball game." And he rolled both balls along the black center line, which means that now it was possible for some kids get whomped with 2 fairy balls at the same time. And that's what happened to me. On the first ball, again, I got 1 ball on the ankle and 1 ball in the stomach. Here's what the next 4 games for dodgeball were like for me that day. Womp, 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 womp. 6 games of dodgeball, and I was the first kid that get knocked out in every one of them. But did I ask if I could go to the nurse when the third womp knocked me down and I skinned my knee? No. And did I ask if I could lie down on the mat when the 5th womp got me right on the head and made me see little rainbows all over the place? No. How come? Maybe because I'm being stupid, but it's probably because I'm not that big. So even if I get hurt sometimes, I don't want anybody to think I'm a quitter. Anyway, I was so glad that gym class is finally over, that I was the first in line at the door to be dismissed for lunch. Mr. Collins came over to the doorway. He gave the blast on his whistle to quiet everyone down. Then he said, "Listen up, troops. You all played great today. Good job. But the player of the day may be the player of month award goes a special guy." Did everyone see who took the first hit in the game today? Did that person complain? No. Did he whine and groan? No. Why? Because he is a real trooper. That's why Jake here deserves my gym class medal of honor. And all you can take some lesson from him on how to be a good sport. All right, troops, dismissed. And of course, as Mrs. Collins was talking about me, what was he doing? He was patting me on the head. And he was talking. I was looking at the other kids. I could tell they didn't think I should getting this attention just because I think at dodgeball. Standing there in the door with Jim was Mr. Collins patting me on the head. I got this sinking feeling in my pit of my stomach. Because Monday was only half over, and I was already well on my way to becoming a unpopular kid in the history of this Breck's Elementary School. Chapter 2. Garbage Guy. I went to my classroom after gym to grab my lunch bag, and then I hurried to the cafeteria. I wanted to sit with Willie. He's my best friend. His real name is Phil, but his last name is Willis, so everyone called him Willie. He was in Mrs. Fruit's class when he was in 3rd grade, so I only got to see him at lunch and at recess.